comparative disadvantage currently to being a postdoc in Canada. And many postdocs have come from other systems, either as postdocs or as graduate students or countries that they come to Canada from. So we had a wealth of experience in other countries and other institutions. And these were just some of the comments we got. So I like this one. Academically, I have a great lab and a great supervisor, but the attitude of my institution to my status and benefits stinks, and is many times worse than it is in the UK. I didn't actually realize the difference between postdocs in Canada and the UK, but for postdocs who hold this, postdoc fellowship and they go to the UK, they have to be topped up to the minimum allowed in the UK system. So Canada, even Canadian fellowships don't make the grade in the UK, for example. And we have a member of our committee who has a prestigious Canadian CIHR fellowship, and his has to be topped up to make the minimums. So, I mean, really, there's an opportunity that exists right now to make Canada a good place to postdoc, but if not, we're seeing that a lot of these postdocs who are having negative experiences are actually going to have a negative impact on the ability to attract postdocs to Canada. We, as a group, sat together and said, well, there's something wrong with the postdoctoral experience generally. What would we recommend to anyone reading this? And so we came up with 5 different recommendations. The first one was to establish a nationally accepted definition of a postdoc, which seems pretty straightforward, but it has not been done yet. The second one is to establish a clear status, whatever that should be, for postdocs at Canadian institutions. The second one may be difficult because different academic institutions, of course, have control over how members of their institution are classified. The third one is to establish clear training guidelines. If the purpose of a postdoc is to be a training, it's a temporary position moving you from graduate school to your chosen career path, be that academia or outside of academia, then there needs to be some kind of established training guidelines. There has to be something that says, this is a good experience and this is a bad experience. And we want to at least make it somewhat uniform. So we need to have what makes a good postdoc, what makes a good postdoc experience. Moving people out of this academic parking lot, whether that be guiding them to the academic process or moving them into other career paths. The statistics are vague at best, but it's believed that at least that the best case scenario is that 1 in 5 postdocs or 1 in 5 graduating PhDs will move into their chosen academic career. So that's 20%. That means 80% will not. Now, whether or not a percentage of this 80% choose not to, and I'm sure there are lots of PhDs who choose not to take the academic route, there's still 80%. So there's lots of people who want that route and are not getting it. So we need, in the postdoc training period, to help facilitate competencies that allow you to move into things like knowledge translation and knowledge mobilization, things like working in policy and working in NGOs and all these other things that people with PhDs would be keenly suited for. But because they just have been tunnel visioned down one path, they don't even consider it. Or if it's considered a failure, which is really what we'd like to move away from, this idea that if you don't take the academic path, you've failed. Most people who get a PhD are pretty driven, pretty smart, and they don't like the idea that I'm going somewhere else and I failed. So there has to be a mindset shift. And of course, the fourth one is that we really need for both funding agencies and institutions to grant appropriate stipends. And that we really believe has to happen at the funding agency level. When you consider the differential in taxation, especially, postdocs, to be a postdoc in Canada from being a graduate student in Canada, you actually have to take a significant pay cut, which we just think is just ridiculous. And then, of course, we're talking about enhancing the academic career progression, because really, we really want to foster the academic progression to be one based on excellence. One of the things that didn't directly come out of the survey but kind of progressed at the same time as the survey is this National Stakeholders Committee on Postdoctoral Scholars. So this is a group that exists nationally. It has representatives from us, from CAPS, from the Canadian Association for Graduate Schools, where some postdocs are now housed, the Associated Universities and Colleges in Canada, CABO, the Tri-Council of Funding, and various different academic institutions. And so this has kind of evolved. We've had 2 face-to-face meetings, and we've drafted a document that has some of the things that we had in our recommendations. It does have a definition that the group could agree to. It tends to be a little bit longer than the NPA one. It has some best practices around postdocs without trying to mandate what institutions, do within their own borders. It mandates things like training competencies and formalizing that relationship. So just some basic. And so we hope to be able to present that document very soon. And then hopefully we can get universities and institutions to sign on to adapt this policy document around postdocs. But then in March, we were kind of blindsided because there was a new federal budget. And up until 2010, I don't think the word postdoc had ever appeared in a government document. And then in the federal budget, it appeared twice. So in the federal 2010 budget, they made 2 announcements regarding postdocs. The first one, which got a lot of publicity, was $45 million for the creation of 140 fellowships to attract top talent worth $70,000 per year at its maximum. So they're going to institute a new fellowship for postdocs, which we think is great. The funding levels for fellowships for postdocs are historically much lower than even graduate students get. So we thought, this is great, we're going to have more fellowships. They're all worth twice what the average postdoc makes, the average stipend being about $38,000. So we're hoping that that means there's a recognition that the stipends are generally too low and that this also accompanies a minimum increase, but that hasn't happened yet. We were really concerned with the language to attract top talent because we were worried that, according to our survey, over 60% are Canadians or permanent residents, and if they would qualify. We've since been told that Canadians will qualify to have these fellowships.